I always wanted to get into anamorphic lenses, and I've been researching this topic for the longest time now, but there are so many choices, different lens mounts, coverage for the sensor, and there's also the price range, ranging from $800 all the way to 50,000. So I was pretty excited when SIRUI reached out to us and wanted us to test the new 24mm and 35mm Super 35 lenses for our f-mount, which is perfect for the C70s that we're using. Both of these lenses are made for Super 35 or APS-C crop sensors, and I will talk a little bit more about this in the body and design section later, but just keep that in mind that it doesn't work on all of the full frame cameras out there. So after testing these lenses, in this video I will give you my opinion on the 24 as well as the 35mm for our f-mount Super 35. My name is David Cooper and welcome to Monkey Pixels. First things first, a little disclaimer. SIRUI reached out to us to send us these lenses for free to make a review about it. But they won't see this review. We have absolutely no restrictions of what we can say, and everything is 100% my own opinion. Second of all, what are we even reviewing here? They sent us two lenses and both have the brand new RF mount. First of all, we have the 24mm 2.8 with a 1.33 squeeze factor, and second of all, we have the 35mm also with a 1.33 squeeze factor, but this time with a 1.8 aperture. And before you watch the review, you can watch our sequence that we shot on these anamorphic lenses. You can watch it right up here, then go back to our review. And just for your information, all of the shots that we used are graded with our Canon custom LUTs, and the link is down in the description below. Since I haven't talked about any anamorphic lenses on this channel before, and I will be talking a little bit about the squeeze factor in this video, what does squeeze factor even mean? And that is something that is characteristic for anamorphic lenses. Let's say we have a 50mm lens with a 2.0 squeeze factor. That basically means that we take our 50mm and we squeeze them into a square-ish format, and then in post-production we de-squeeze it by 2. So now we have a wider field of view with a background compression of a way longer lens, and that makes for a really cool image. The first thing I want to talk about these lenses is the build quality and the design. What I really like about those lenses is that they are fairly compact and lightweight and yet feel very solid. They have a certain weight to it, but it's not too flimsy and plasticky because everything is made out of metal. And the cool thing about this, and this is kind of atypical for anamorphic lenses, is that they are fairly small. So you can use them on a gimbal and you don't really have the issues that you run into with bigger anamorphics. Like I already said, the entire build quality of these lenses is very solid, everything is metal, and it doesn't feel cheap at all. The 24mm has a 72mm filter thread, whereas the 35mm has a 67mm filter thread. 98% of the times we're using clamp-on matte boxes like our Tilta Mirage. So I would really like for these lenses to have a 95mm outer diameter, because I think they're marketed as cinema lenses. So this is just a minor minus, but overall we can just use our step-up ring and that works fine too. One thing that was really confusing about these lenses is that they don't have integrated focus gear rings. And that is kind of weird because those are obviously not still lenses and you also can't use them with autofocus. So not having integrated gear focus rings so that you can use them with a follow focus kind of bothered me. You cannot use fine gear rings, and we used some from Tilta that we just put on top of the lens, and that worked fairly well with our follow focus. I just wish they had these included or just made them onto the lens by default. But speaking of the rings on both of these lenses, I really did enjoy using them because they were really smooth, and that made it very easy for us to pull focus also with a follow focus, and that is not a given on all other lenses because sometimes they're really stiff and that makes it really hard for a follow focus to pull focus with, but those were really smooth. The aperture rings were also smooth, but they weren't too easy. And that is something when shooting handheld always bothered me on other lenses, because it's so easy to just change the aperture while shooting and not even noticing it. But here they were smooth, but they were also firm enough. I also like the overall look of these anamorphic lenses, also with their blue lines, and I'm not sure if they have amber streaks as well, but the version that we have has blue streaks, but I will talk about this in the image quality section, and I think this is what the blue ring indicates. One obviously really significant characteristic of these lenses is the RF mount, because those are brand new and before you couldn't get them in RF. As a Canon C70 shooter, I really highly appreciate it. I still think that the RF mount on these kind of lenses is kind of weird, because technically there's only two cameras you can use these with natively, and that is the Canon C70 and the Red Komodo. In addition to the Canon C70 and the Red Komodo, there's also now the R7 and I think the R10, and both of these lenses should work with either of these cameras. Haven't tested it out, but since both of them have an APS-C sensor as well as an RF mount, that should also work. You could of course use a Canon R5, R5C, R6 and put it in Super 35 crop mode, and then the lenses work as well. But again, natively, it only works with a handful of cameras right now. And now let's finally talk about image quality, because that is basically what it comes down to when choosing your lenses for your projects. I have to admit, I didn't really have that much expectations going into the lens tests because, well, it's a 1.33 squeeze factor, so the squeeze factor is rather minimal. A lot of these other lenses have either a 1.6, 1.8 or even a 2.0 squeeze factor, and 1.33 isn't all that much. So I wasn't really expecting too much. That being said, let's start talking about the bokeh. And here I was pleasantly surprised. On all of our tests, we could see that there was some nice characteristics to our bokeh, and it wasn't as clean as our Sigma primes, for example. You had some hint at a swirly, nice, anamorphic looking bokeh in most of our shots, and that I was pleasantly surprised by. I overall like the bokeh of these lenses because they add a bit of character to it, and they're not as clean as some of our other primes. Next up, let's talk about sharpness, and those lenses are really sharp. And oftentimes for our projects, I don't like it to be that sharp, but the combination of the rather soft C70 sensor and a 1/4 mist filter that we're using on most of our projects and the sharpness of the lenses itself, it just gave us a beautiful image, and that was exactly what we were looking for. That being said, the lens is really sharp in the middle, and the further you go to the outsides, it just gets really mushy. But again, this also adds to the anamorphic look, and I personally really do like it. I've seen other way more expensive anamorphic lenses that are soft right out of the gate, and if you combine them with a rather soft sensor like our Canon C70, then it gets even too soft for me. But the sharpness of the SIRUI lenses in combination with the Canon C70 just made for a great combo. One thing that everybody is looking for when talking about anamorphic lenses are the lens flares. And I've seen some other test footage of the SIRUI anamorphics with different lens mounts, and sometimes I found the lens flares a little bit too much on the nose. But here I'm not sure if it is the RF mount, but I found them to be a little bit more tame. Yes, we also shot in a cloudy environment when pointing it at the sun, but here I just felt it was just the right amount of lens flares, and I was even surprised when using it in the inner city here in Vienna at night. The lens flares just weren't all over the place either. And again, I found this to be just the right amount. It was hinted at, it wasn't really difficult to get those lenses to be flaring, and sometimes this is something that I also don't enjoy if you have an anamorphic lens that you just really need to point a direct light source into to just see any kind of flares. So here I really found that was the right amount. Our lenses have a blue flare, and this is the flare that I would go to anyway, even if I had the choice between amber, silver and blue, because I just like it the best. And like I said, it's not too on the nose, it's easy to get, and for me, I really do like the flaring. When I asked you guys on Instagram what you want to know about the lenses, and if you don't follow me on Instagram yet, then here's your chance, a lot of you asked about the focus breathing. When using the 24mm, we hardly have any focus breathing at all, and it's very minimal, even when we're going from the closest distance all the way to infinity. And well, I do like focus breathing on anamorphic lenses because I feel like this also adds to the character. The 35mm does have way more focus breathing, but I also think that this is just the right amount. Sometimes it's a little bit too much, but again, even on anamorphic lenses on high Hollywood productions, there is a lot of breathing, especially on longer anamorphic lenses, and I for one actually like it. Another topic that is often talked about when it comes to anamorphic lenses is the close focus distance, because usually anamorphic lenses have a way longer close focus distance than spherical lenses. And here the SIRUI is actually quite alright as well. The 24mm that I'm shooting on right now has a close focus distance of 0.6 meters or 2 feet. Whereas the 35mm has a longer close focal distance of 0.85 meters or 2.8 feet. And I think the close focus distance of both lenses is actually quite manageable, even if you want to get some detailed shots. Yes, it's not a macro and you won't get too close with these lenses, but I found compared to other anamorphic lenses, that was actually quite decent. A little bit more about the image quality. The 24mm does have some barrel distortions on the outside, and you can clearly see that if there's a pole on the outside of your frame, that it does look bent. Me personally, I love that about anamorphic lenses, and it just adds to the overall character of these lenses. Some people don't really like it, but I love it, and I wish that even the 35mm had it, because the 35mm doesn't have any of this. The 24mm covers our C70 Super 35 sensor perfectly, so there was no vignetting and we got the full coverage. However, when using our Tilta Mirage clamp on matte box, we did get a little bit of vignetting in the corners, so just keep that in mind that this is our matte box and not the lens. So what's my overall verdict of the SIRUI anamorphic lenses? I think for this price tag and the RF mount, it's absolutely unbeatable. I was absolutely pleasantly surprised about the image quality for the price, and I think they come in at around $900 each, and they're currently on Indiegogo. And if you want to order any of the Super 35 lenses from SIRUI, there's a link down in the description below with a discount code and you can get some percentages off. I like the character that these lenses had, and I also like the handling and the lens flare, so here I was really surprised about how much I actually like these lenses, and I will probably use them on a lot of our projects in the near future. I wish they had the full lineup of Super 35 lenses for RF mount just yet. As of right now, I think they only have the 24 and the 35mm, and if you want to have a full set like the 50 and the 75, you need to go to their full frame lenses. This will obviously work, but they do have a different squeeze factor, so you need to change the squeeze factor in your camera all the time, and it might be a little bit annoying, but I'm pretty sure they will come out with Super 35 lenses in the near future. And if you like this video, then please give it a thumbs up because it really helps the channel grow. Subscribe for more, check out the LUTs that we use to grade all of our footage, and since you're already here and you're interested in anamorphic lenses, make sure to check out these two videos. That is the 2-minute sequence that we shot with these lenses, as well as the full behind the scenes vlog where we pulled focus manually on a gimbal wirelessly with cool new monitors. And I hope to see you on the next one.